After 25 die, protesters prepare to stand their ground in Ukraine. Are you in Ukraine? Send us your photos and experiences, but please stay safe. Kiev, Ukraine, CNN. They've given up their ground before voluntarily as a political concession, but that seems to be over. After the deaths of 25 people in clashes a day earlier, Ukrainian protesters are prepared to stand and fight again Wednesday. Police want to clear them out of central Kiev. Some of them died trying to stay put Tuesday, using projectiles and burning barricades to keep security forces at bay at Kiev's Maidan or Independence Square. It was the deadliest day in the months-long standoff between the government and opposition leaders. Thousands of demonstrators have packed Independence Square since November, when President Viktor Yanukovych reversed a decision to sign a trade deal with the European Union and instead turned toward Russia. The unrest intensified after an anti-protest law went into effect. Throngs of demonstrators took to the streets to protest the law. Police and protesters were among Tuesday's dead. A journalist and a government employee died too. More than 240 others were hospitalized, Ukraine's health ministry said. Overnight, demonstrators stocked up, passing stones hand to hand, filling Molotov cocktails and stocking flaming barricades with wood and tires. They prepared a makeshift compressed air cannon to catapult the projectiles into police ranks. Hundreds of others came out to give moral support to those holding the square and to add their numbers to the throng wanting to keep the opposition movement alive. Corporate lawyer and reporter Volodymyr Solohov was one of them. Whenever police threatened to clear the Maidan, he goes there. Tuesday, he watched as protesters rushed injured people from the front lines to medics. Some of them had broken hands and blood was flowing down their faces, he said Wednesday. Barrages of stun grenades shattered the air around him through the night. When it goes off, the whole area vibrates, he said, but the barricades held and it made him happy. When the sun rose Wednesday, smoke was still rising from them into the sky, finger pointing, even as the European Union scheduled a meeting on Ukraine for Thursday, and the leader of France and Poland called for sanctions over the violence. Yanukovych fired fresh vitriol at his opposition. He pinned blame for the violence exclusively on protesters, but he would have none of it himself. This is my life principle. No power is worth a drop of blood spilled for it, he said in a statement. Yet he issued a veiled threat to protesters. Opposition forces should disassociate themselves from the radical forces that provoke bloodshed and clashes with law enforcement, he said. Otherwise, admit to supporting them and he treated accordingly, Yanukovych demanded. Opposition leaders pointed the finger back, painting their supporters as the victims, not the aggressors. Neither side seems to have a monopoly on the use of violence, and in the mayhem, it is sometimes hard to tell who is carrying it out. The journalist who died Wednesday was shot the night before after a group of masked people stopped a taxi he was riding in. According to a statement by his newspaper, Ukraine Vesti, they wore camouflage clothes and were throwing Molotov cocktails. They beat other passengers in the car, the paper reported. Hopes dashed hard. Tuesday's violence followed what seemed like a rare breakthrough. The government had said it would drop charges against those arrested in the political unrest. After holding Kyiv's city hall for 3 months, protesters pulled back Sunday and unblocked streets in the city center, but hope died Tuesday when the Speaker of Parliament refused to allow amendments that would limit the president's powers. Opposition anger reignited and poured into the street. The government's prosecutor general accused the opposition of breaking the truce, thus setting the stage for the security crackdown that ensued. Riot police plowed into the crowd with water cannons, stun generators, and nightsticks. Some demonstrators fought back, swinging what looked like baseball bats. Protesters set fire to the headquarters of the ruling party of regions, but the opposition's headquarters, the trade union's house, was also smothering at daybreak Wednesday. Authorities accused protesters of firing guns at security forces, and an armored personnel carrier charged barricades but was quickly inundated and set alight. Kyiv was the center of the action as in the past, but police said the unrest has spread to western Ukraine, with protesters attacking police and local government offices in a number of regions. Political field spark. Flaming barricades have been a constant for 3 months all around Kyiv's Independence Square, but Tuesday's bloodshed marked a decided escalation. Though the strife started over a trade pact, protesters' anger was fueled by underlying sentiments in favor of the West and against Russia. Their initial call for Yanukovych to reverse his decision on the EU trade deal launched over time into an attack on the president's power base. Yanukovych and his allies respond with some concessions, offering places in government to opposition leaders, but off again, talks have gone nowhere. Both sides had demanded that the other back down first, and neither is budging. Yanukovych and opposition leader and fan boxer Vital Klitschko played another round of the U-first game in an overnight face-to-face meeting. Speaking to reporters afterward, Klitschko said there effectively was no discussion. The president demanded the protesters back up first. Klitschko threw the demand back at him. I told Yanukovych this, he said. How can we negotiate when there is blood being spilled? When West vs Moscow. EU leaders condemned the violence and waived the possibility of sanctions at Kyiv's government, placing most of the responsibility on its shoulders. EU Commission President Jose Manuel Barroso threatened targeted measures against those responsible in a statement. Europe will certainly reconsider the restraint it has shown in deciding whether to impose sanctions on individuals, said German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier. But Russia is also waiving money, standing by with billions in economic and aid for Ukraine's economy. Since political tensions began, Washington and Moscow have weighed in on opposite ends and kept doing so Tuesday. U.S. Vice President Joe Biden called Yanukovych to press him to stop the violence, placing the responsibility to de-escalate mainly with government. Secretary of State John Kerry later backed up the vice president's words. He called for the Ukraine government to halt violence immediately and reopen dialogue with the opposition. Russia accused Washington of meddling in Ukraine affairs. Washington is trying to tell the authorities of a sovereign state what they should do next and how they should do it. An article in Russia's state-run area novelist read, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon condemned the clashes in a statement last Tuesday and called for them to stop. He reiterated to all sides that the use of violence is unacceptable, it read. Ban said preventing more bloodshed is a paramount priority, but in Kiev the call may be falling on the deaf ears of embittered rivals. Non-84 sentenced to 35 months for nuclear break-in. CNN, an 84-year-old nun was sentenced to 35 months in prison Tuesday for breaking into a nuclear facility, her lawyer said. In May, a federal jury in Connellsville, Tennessee, found Sister Megan Rice, Greg Barty Obaid, 57, and Michael Wally, 63, guilty of destroying U.S. government property and causing more than $1,000 in damage to federal property. It was not immediately clear what the sentences were for the two other peace activists. The incident began before dawn on July 28, 2012, when the three cut through a chain-link fence surrounding the Y-12 National Security Complex in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. They then walked nearly a mile, cutting through three more fences and breaching what was supposed to be the most tightly secured uranium processing and storage facility in the country. It was not until hours later that a guard finally confronted the activists, who by then had hosted banners, spray-painted messages, and splattered human blood on a building that houses highly enriched uranium. They're at peace about this. They're peacemakers, and they knew that they risked this. Joe Quigley, an attorney for Whaley, told CNN affiliate Wait in May after their trial. Nobody is happy to go jail, but they understand. In response to the incident, Congress has held a series of hearings and issued security recommendations to the Department of Energy and its National Nuclear Security Administration, with Ron's Y-12 and 7 other nuclear weapon sites. In March, Deputy Energy Secretary Daniel Pullman testified before the House Energy and Commerce Committee that the Department of Energy had taken several major actions to improve security since the breach, including management changes and independent security reviews. In pictures, on-board meals go flying as plane hits turbulence. CNN. Images taken on a recent Singapore Airlines flight might suggest passengers had become unusually ferocious in their disdain for the on-board meal, but this was no boxy melon, food feeding fista. The plane hit turbulence shortly after breakfast was served, and the result was culinary carnage. Singapore Airlines flight SQ308 experienced moderate to severe turbulence en route from Singapore to London on May 26th, said airline spokesman Nicholas Lownite. Brace yourself, flight set to the bumpier coaster. 11 passengers and 1 crew member sustained minor injuries when the aircraft experienced a sudden loss of altitude and were attended to by medical personnel on arrival at Heathrow Airport. Passengers reported coffee cups, cutlery, and even a few people were thrown about the cabin as the plane lost altitude. Alan Cross, one of the passengers who took the images you see here, told CNN, "Everything violently rocked off all the tray tables into the ceiling. You literally felt your stomach going into your throat." The mess was cleaned up soon after and passengers were given chocolate gifts on landing in London. In 2012, turbulence injuries passengers crew as flight approaches Miami. Does Formula Mystery help keep Coke afloat? London, CNN. Coca-Cola, the world's ubiquitous brown fizzy drink, is staying afloat as the soda market shrinks, and many point to a marketing strategy around the so-called secret recipe as key to its resilience in a struggling industry. The Coca-Cola Company, which published its full-year result Tuesday, recorded a 5% drop in net income to $8.6 billion last year, down from $9 billion in 2012 as it faced ongoing global macroeconomic challenges, according to its chief executive, Martha Kent. Volume grew 2% for the year, which it said was below our expectations and long-term growth target, with sparkling beverages recording a slight increase of 1% led by Coca-Cola. Globally, soda drink sales have been shrinking as consumers turn to water, fruit drinks, and healthier alternatives. The trend has hit Coke and other market players such as PepsiCo and Dr. Pepper. And while its primary competitor, PepsiCo, depends on its snack business to buy the declining soda sales, Coke announced further investment to its marketing. In a tough market, one strategy that brand experts credit Coke's relative strength with is the mystery around the much-hyped secret recipe. The very idea of mystery attracts attention and is often seen as an element of quality, says social psychologist and marketing expert Ben Boyer, lecturer at London School of Economics and ESCP Europe Business School. A typical consumer would think that it must be a valuable product if they're doing all these things to protect the recipe. Coca-Cola's secret recipe story, on which it has centered advertising campaigns and built into its corporate museum, reaches back nearly a century. According to the multinational's website, the original recipe was only written down in 1919, more than half a century after a reported morphine addict and pharmacist John Pemberton invented the drink in 1886. Until then, it was passed down by word of mouth. The formula was finally committed to paper when a group of investors led by Ernest Wardroff took out a loan to purchase the company in 1919. As collateral, He provided a written record of the Coca-Cola secret formula, Coke said in a statement on its site. Since the 1920s, the document sat locked in a bank in Atlanta, until Coca-Cola decided to emphasize the secret in its marketing strategy. 86 years later, Coca-Cola moved the recipe into a proposed build vote within the world of Coca-Cola. The company's museum in Atlanta, the ambience is made complete by red lighting and fake smoke. Coca-Cola has always claimed only two senior executives know the formula at any given time, although they have never revealed names or positions. But according to an advertising campaign based around the recipe that can travel on the same plane, the vote, like one straight from a film, has a PLAM scanner, a numerical code pad, and massive steel door. Inside its walls, there's nothing safe box with more security features, and inside that a metal case containing what its owners call the most guarded trade secret in the world, a piece of paper with, according to Coca-Cola, a recipe inside. But Mark Pendergrast, author of For Fruit, Country, and Coca-Cola, is skeptical. John Pemberton invented Coca-Cola in 1886 at the height of the patent medicine era, and one of the ironies of that name is that no one actually patented such creations, he says. They kept the formulas secret, partly in order to increase sales with a sense of special mystery and to prevent competition, but also to keep people from knowing how cheap the ingredients were and how large the profit, he says. The company has never patented the formula, saying to do so would require its disclosure, and once the patent expired, anyone would be able to use that recipe to produce a generic version of the world-famous drink. The secrecy creates a natural curiosity about the product itself. Consumers are more likely to try to find out the recipe, Voyer says. Aiding it creates a legend around Coca-Cola's flagship drink. Scores of recipes have emerged through the decades. Their authors usually claim to have cracked the original recipe by getting hold of antique documents. So far, Coke has rejected all of them as fantasy, saying there is only one real thing. Mark Pendergast's book includes two versions of the original formula. One is a facsimile in the handwriting of Frank Robinson, the using hero of Coca-Cola who named the drink, wrote the famous script logo, manufactured the drink in its early days, and advertised it, he says. Does he think the recipe is genuine? Yes, I think that both of the Coca-Cola formulas in my books are the real thing, versions of the original formula for Coca-Cola, he says. In the end, the exact formula isn't really the issue, he says. Pendergrast reiterates a tale told in his book, in which he speaks to a Coca-Cola spokesperson, who points out that even if its competitors got hold of the formula, they wouldn't be able to compete. Why would anyone go out of their way to buy Yum Yum, which is really just like Coca-Cola, but costs more when they can buy the real thing anywhere in the world, he was told. Tensions high in Ukraine after at least 21 died in fiery clashes. I report, have you witnessed the protest in Ukraine? Share your experience, but please stay safe. Kiev, Ukraine, CNN. Downtown Kiev was aglow in fire early Wednesday as demonstrators, undeterred by a bloody day on the streets, staked their claim to the heart of the Ukraine capital and, they hope, the heart of the country itself. Such flames have been a constant for 3 months, acting as fiery barricades all around Kiev's Maidan or Independence Square. For protesters, yet the flames grew more ominous on Tuesday, as at least 21 people died in fresh clashes between government forces and activists. What began with protests over President Viktor Yanukovych's backpedaling from a trade pact with the European Union, a move that the opposition mentioned, accusing Yanukovych of trying to cozy up to Russia rather than the West, has spun into something much larger. In addition to new elections, the opposition is calling for constitutional reforms to transfer more power from the presidency to the parliament. Yanukovych and his allies have responded with some concessions, even offering places in government to opposition leaders, but on again, off again, talks have gone nowhere, with the opposition refusing to budge politically and form its positions in the center of Kiev. None of that changed after a face-to-face meeting overnight between Yanukovych and opposition leader Vitaly Klitschko. Speaking to reporters afterward, Klitschko said there effectively was no discussion. According to his Ukraine Democratic Alliance for Reform's party, the president demanded protesters stop the standoff and put down their weapons, an accusation that Klitschko claimed is unfounded. I think the authorities should immediately pull back the police and stop the blood, because people are dying. Klitschko said, I told young Liz, how can we negotiate when there is blood being spilled? Unfortunately, he does not understand it. What's behind Ukraine's political crisis? That last day of political unrest. Tuesday's violence followed what seemed like a rare breakthrough. Protesters poured back Sunday from Kyiv City Hall and unlocked streets in the city center after the government said it dropped charges against those arrested in the political unrest. Then everything fell apart Tuesday. The Speaker of Parliament's refusal to allow amendments that would limit the president's powers and restore the constitution to what it was in 2004 angered many in the opposition. The government's prosecutor general, meanwhile, accused the opposition of breaking the truce and therefore setting the stage for the crackdown. For the sake of pursuing their own political interests, they neglected all previously reached agreements and put lives and the peace of millions of Kyiv residents under threat, said Viktor Fusnaka, Ukraine's prosecutor general. Whoever was to blame, there was no dispute. Tuesday was the deadliest day by far in the political unrest. Riot police used water cannons, stun grenades, and other means to force their way through protesters, with video showing some of them toting shades and swinging sticks as they barreled through. Some demonstrators fought back, swinging what looked like baseball bats or using other means. Protesters also set fire to the headquarters of the ruling party of Regions. Authorities accused them of firing guns at security forces. A CNN employee at the scene saw demonstrators carrying pellet guns, though not with live ammunition. One video showed an armored personal carrier charging toward demonstrators' barricades, only to be inundated by a flurry of what appeared to be Molotov cocktails. The vehicle then burst into flames. All the moving parts, different tactics, and raw emotions contributed to a violent tragedy merely in the center of Ukraine's capital. Officials warned people to stay indoors and shuttered metro stations to help control the situation. The situation hardly calmed as night descended. Black smoke and bright flames from burning tires continued to rage around Independence Square, just a few blocks from Parliament. Small explosions regularly erupted all night, the product of protesters, fireworks, and perhaps the stun grenades that police have been using to clear the crowds. Demonstrators also worked through the night to build up their barricades. By forming human chains to pass bricks, rocks, and wood up their front lines in anticipation of another police offensive. Ukraine's security forces did indeed move forward, despite a barrage of rocks, before halting their advance for now at least. Kyiv was the center of the action, just like it has been all winter. With 9 police officers, 11 protesters, and an employee from the ruling party's headquarters among those killed according to officials. But it wasn't just the capital. Police confirmed the unrest has spread to western Ukraine, with protesters attacking police and local government offices in a number of regions. Blame game calls for restraint. Fonka, Ukraine's prosecutor general, blamed protesters for the violence that he said that in addition to those killed, injured at least 100 others. The organizers of a rally Tuesday that descended into violence will be held accountable for every single person injured. Every car burned and every window broken, he said. Today we were able to see that only the government is interested in peaceful resolution of the situation, Fonka said. Opposition leaders should take the responsibility for everything happening in the street of Kyiv today. Opposition leaders painted their supporters as the victims, not the aggressors. Hicsko, a former world-class boxer turned politician, accused police of cruelly shooting at people in central Kyiv, and Arseny Yatsenyuk, an opposition leader from a party other than Hicsko's, made a public appeal to Yanukovych. Do not let Ukraine become a country covered with blood. Pull back the police and announce a ceasefire. Then we will negotiate. U.S. Vice President Joe Biden himself pressed Yanukovych in a phone call, with the White House saying the government bears special responsibility to de-escalate the situation. Secretary of State John Kerry later backed up the vice president's words. He called for the Ukraine government to halt violence immediately and reopen dialogue with the opposition. Kerry, United States, EU stand with Ukraine's people. On the flip side, Russia's state-run RIA Novosti's story on the latest Kyiv unrest noted Moscow's persistent support for Yanukovych and its accusation, made earlier this week from Foreign Ministry spokesman Alexander Lukashenko that Washington is trying to tell the authorities of a sovereign state that they should do next and how they should do it. Such international back and forth is especially significant in the Ukraine, given not only its geographic and political position between Europe and Russia and the origins of the latest unrest. It began in November with Yanukovych's decision to scuttle an European Union trade pact that opposition hoped would bring the Ukraine closer to the West and improve its economy in the process. The next month, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia would buy $15 billion in Ukraine debt and slash the price keep place for its gas. As the months rolled on, the conflict expanded beyond the long simmering discovered over whether Ukraine should align more with the West or with Russia. The opposition has pressed to change how the Eastern European nation's government operates, namely through constitutional and other reforms that would, among other things, shift powers away from its president and toward parliaments.